We saw like dozens of requests for proposals coming in from banks, especially in the US, for our custody products. I think that's a pretty good sign that the institutions are coming.
There's no, the government's about to do some big thing having to do with XRP. There's nothing like that that I know of anyway. And so if your involvement or investment is based on the belief that there's some big secret going on that's gonna, I think you probably are foolish.
All right, real fast. I just wanted to come over to Aqua's X profile to let him share, his own perspective on this piece here. And I don't know, Aqua, if you kind of want to hit a talk track on what this even is, as you were explaining it to me this morning before I played the video clip to everybody so they can hear it. But this went viral, 88,000 impressions, 44 comments, almost 300 likes, 43 reposts. So I'd assume that it's something of importance for the XRP community to listen to, as it's coming directly from David Schwartz, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it absolutely is. He was in an X space, and I wasn't in that space. I'm only hearing this clip, but the clip of what he was saying, honest to God, just was like, holy smokes. I didn't think anybody from the Ripple team would even speak like this on XRP, because here's the thing, when you come into crypto, especially when you come in, through the XRP channel, you become very passionate about XRP, and you start hearing all of the, potential theories of how XRP will play out, price action, the government using it, so on and so on, a bunch of speculation that seems to be believed across the board through all of the XRP army. And to hear David Schwartz speak on these topics and give his, his position and what his thoughts are on these topics, I was like, yo, this is a rude awakening, I feel like, for a lot of people, because a lot of people are invested with, just wishful thinking, hopeful thinking, and don't really have facts. And to hear him clear that stuff up, I was like, yo, this is exactly what I wanted to hear. Like, this is amazing that he even said this. So yeah.
There are a lot of NDAs around agreements, but like, it's not like those agreements are earth shattering. It's just when Ripple, signs an agreement with somebody, they generally disclosure agreement, because their business is their business. There's no, 99% is what you see is what you get. And if you think that there's something because you heard a rumor about it, you heard something from unofficial sources, it's almost always it's either going to be false, or it's just a very short period of time from when it becomes public. Some things have become public just a short period of time, but there's no major secrets that have been going on for years or as far as I know anyway. Now, just to be clear, I have a pretty good idea of what's going on at Ripple. If things are going on at other places, I have a pretty good idea of what's going on at the XRPL Foundation. I have a pretty good idea of what's going on some places, but like, there's a lot of places where there could be stuff going on that I know nothing about. But as far as I know, there's no conspiracy, there's no secret plan, there's no, the government's about to do some big thing having to do with XRP. There's nothing like that that I know of anyway. And so if your involvement or investment is based on the belief that there's some big secret going on that's gonna, I think you probably are foolish. And so if your involvement or investment is based on the belief that there's some big secret going on that's gonna, I think you probably are foolish.
Yeah,
wow.
Bro. Yeah. And when I heard that, I was like, I'm gonna be real. When I first came into crypto and I was holding XRP, I believed a lot of the theories. I was like, oh, that's, hell yeah, let me buy more XRP. This thing's going to $1,000. The government's gonna use it. And for him to speak on that and say what he just said, we got to be realistic with our investments, and we can't put all of our eggs in one basket. In my opinion, not financial advice, of course, but going all in on a speculation. I don't know.
The crazy part about this clip directly from David Schwartz is that because people's belief systems are so enshrined and just manipulated by social media, even though that this dude is the core developer and core engineer of the XRP ledger, right? You would think that he knows more than the average person on the internet. you know, it's like people will still be like, nah, there is a conspiracy. You know, there is.
Some of the comments are actually saying that, bro. They're like, oh, he's
wrong,
lying.
David.
You're wrong, David. He's lying. He can't say anything. He's under an NDA. Well, then why even speak on the topic then? Why?
Yeah.
Why even speak on the topic, you know?
Look, at the end of the day, I hold a shit ton of XRP and I'm still long-term bullish on it. But what I will be doing with my XRP is not what I had previously thought, as Ripple's whole entire approach to cross-border payments and that whole entire thing has completely changed. And their focus has shifted now towards institutional DeFi, right? Being able to put your digital assets, particularly XRP and RLUSD, to work to earn passive income. And that is exactly what I'll be doing with my XRP for years to come, regardless of what happens to the price. I'll be earning yield on my XRP if it stays at $1 for forever, or if it goes to $1,000, I'll still be earning yield on it. I'll be lending it out, borrowing against it, probably buying real estate, tokenizing that real estate, renting out that real estate, paying off. Like, there's so many passive income opportunities that you can partake in just by utilizing digital assets like XRP, and that are going to continue to mature in the future. And if you're focused on price appreciation, you're missing the whole entire concept of infinite banking and, you know, literally just becoming your own bank, right? Using decentralized finance to your own personal benefit. So, yeah, I've never been a part of the whole entire crowd. You actually could never. I've been making XRP content since 2016. You cannot find one single video or post that I've ever made on telling somebody that XRP's price is going to go to $1,000, because I believe it's going to go to a high number. But yeah, $1,000 XRP, in my personal opinion. If it happens, great. I'll be a multi-billionaire if it did. Yeah, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah, a lot of us will. Shit.
You know. All right. Anyways, moving on. That was just. I mean, I always like to hear what David Schwartz says. I feel like being part of the XRP community, you'd think that what David Schwartz says would be relatively important, but actually, people pay less attention to what David Schwartz says than some random person. So I said here in this post, 2026 is showing you something that most people are still ignoring. Gold this year printed new all-time highs. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ are pushing to record levels. I believe today they both reached new all-time highs. Real estate, both in the US and globally, is sitting at its highest valuation in history. That's not random. That is capital positioning. Now zoom out. Over the next few years, every one of these markets is moving on-chain. Tokenization isn't a theory anymore. It's the direction that institutions are building towards. And while all of this is happening, crypto is still being treated like it's early. It's still misunderstood and it's still discounted. That's where the opportunity sits. Institutions are already understanding the shift. They're not just guessing, they are waiting on regulatory clarity, waiting on sound infrastructure, and waiting on the green light to scale. Because once regulation catches up, capital is not just going to trickle in, it is going to flood in. The same way that capital chased equities, chased gold and real estate to new highs, it will rotate into the next system. The question isn't if this transition is going to happen, it's whether you positioned before it became obvious.
Generally speaking, the rails today through which crypto is accessed are pure execution. And one of the reasons is reputational. A lot of these players we're discussing that are coming into the space, they're not showcasing crypto and flaunting crypto the way they have other products that they've already been more familiar with for many years. If you look at the number of banks which are offering advisory or discretionary mandates with crypto in them, there's not many. They probably fit in one hand in Europe. And I would say a hand with few fingers too. So I think there's going to be a cultural transition, which is going to go from execution only to more advisory discretionary, which then increases the amount of education that is effectively done. Now, today, the banking space, almost always in a closed loop environment. It's buy, sell, hold. Get familiar with crypto without overcomplicating compliance topics, travel rule topics. Now the regulation comes in and starts forcing also more open loops, at least in European Union, when it comes to moving assets out. Another thing that's worth keeping in mind, and this is one of the conversations we have, how is the trading actually achieved? Brazil, as an early adopter, and some of the banks here are incredibly advanced in insourcing the flows and offering it as a principal. So you start seeing crypto on the balance sheet of some of these banks, as opposed to most European banks, which are a little bit more conservative. They act as an agent and they will rely on a broker or on an exchange providing that liquidity behind the scenes. So I think there's all these different approaches. There's some clear setups, which are, I think, very relevant today with also their advantages and disadvantages. And more and more, you're going to see different models around the globe kind of converging in a way that ultimately will be best off for the end customer as well.
All right. So in a nutshell, he's just going on to talk about how all these financial institutions have flooded into these traditional asset classes and how over time you're going to start to see these traditional players start to actually incorporate crypto on their balance sheet. He mentioned European financial institutions. You could count on one hand how many of them have actual crypto embedded into their infrastructure behind the scenes, right? So that just goes to show how early we are in this space. This post comes directly from Monica Long, where she said, within our business, we saw dozens of requests for proposals coming in from banks, especially in the US for custody products. And that's a pretty good sign that institutions are coming.
The US is a night and day shift in terms of regulatory clarity, and thus night and day shift in terms of institutional appetite to adopt these technologies. I would say kind of like the bright line last year was the Genius Act. So this is the first time the US created legislation that provided clarity around at least stablecoins, now working on the Clarity Act this year. But that was really important for validation of the technology and the whole industry for traditional finance to be able to say, okay, this is here to stay, and we can use these technologies in a way that is approved by our regulators, and they have that clearance. It's like a green light. It was really, really important. And I mean, I could say at a macro level, I know things like B2B stablecoin payment volume more than doubled last year from 2024 to 25, as well as assets under custody by institutions, digital assets under custody by institutions. And within our business, I could say that we saw like dozens of requests for proposals coming in from banks, especially in the US, for our custody products. I think that's a pretty good sign that the institutions are coming.
That ain't the first time I've heard her say institutions are coming. I'll tell you that.
She didn't say they're here. She said they're coming.
Yeah.
Right? So very interesting to pay attention to. I want to come over here to this post that I had put out from XRPL Commons. And let me see why it's not sharing screen real quick. Okay, here we go. So this post right here from XRPL Commons, and it goes on to mention, well, first I'll read my post. I said, more confirmation. The focus has expanded well beyond payments into native DeFi, built with institutional grade security. And I said, having the ability to put idle capital to work in XRP is one of the biggest and most comprehensive features since the inception of XRPL itself. And here, this is directly from XRPL Commons, and it says, in this fireside chat on the XRPL product roadmap with Odelia Tortman, Director of Corporate Adoption, and Marcus Infinger, they detailed how the protocol is technically preparing for this institutional influx. The focus has expanded well beyond payments. I want you guys to think about this because of the narrative that existed on XRP prior to all the things that are happening right now in regards to DeFi. The focus has expanded well beyond payments into a native DeFi stack built with institutional grade security. Then it mentions all of the XLS 65, XLS 66, the lending protocol, and a multi-purpose token, or MPT. And then here, I went on to repost this on top of the comment from the gentleman, Ayo Akinya. I'm probably butchering his name, but he's the head of engineering at XRPL. And he mentioned that payments was never the full story for the XRPL.
Ayo. Ripple has been making a deliberate shift in how it positions XRPL, less as a payments network, more as a platform for institutional finance. Ripple has been making a deliberate shift in how it positions XRPL, less as a payments network, more as a platform for institutional finance, namely tokenized assets, on-chain credit markets, compliance infrastructure. From where you sit, what's driving the shift? And for a financial institution or a builder evaluating where to place their bet, what's the actual case for XRPL over the alternatives?
Great question. So one of the lessons that we've learned working with institutions is that they don't adopt new technology for the sake of adopting it, right? They adopt technology that fits what they're already operating with or operating as. And for us, payments was never the full story for the XRPL. And as we've deepened our payments fits what they're already operating with or operating as. And for us, payments was never the full story for the XRPL. And for us, payments was never the full story for the XRPL. And as we've deepened our relationship with financial institutions, we've learned that the real opportunity is actually more towards the ability for us to enable this notion of a full life cycle of capital and moving money.
So he literally just said, as we have been partnering with financial institutions, what we've realized is that the real opportunity is for us to provide this full life cycle of capital, right? That means lending, borrowing, posting digital assets as collateral. They literally just mentioned that Ripple has shifted their focus from cross-border payments and remittances to DeFi. And he said specifically, this is not coming from me. This is not some made-up influencer jargon. This is the guy that works at Ripple, just said that payments was never the full vision for the XRPL.
He said that pretty loud and clear.
You know, you got Marcus Infinger over here. And at the same event, he goes on to talk about how this XLS 66 lending and borrowing capabilities of the XRPL has been the most comprehensive and complex thing that Ripple has done since XRPL's inception.
Like glue on this network and across networks.
So what we're seeing is an amendment that would allow protocol level lending. And I know that's there's a lot of excitement building around that. More broadly, what do you think that means more generally for DeFi and for the XRP ledger?
Yeah, I think it means a very big deal. And there's two sides to the story here. One is this was probably the most complex feature that Ripple has released over the course of the last 13 years. Probably the more complex one was the XRP ledger itself in 2012.
One of the reasons why Ethereum sits in the number 2 spot is because of its DeFi primitives, because of how much capital that is not just sitting idle, holding and hodling Ethereum. It's instead being put to work, which creates a native demand for Ethereum token, no matter bull or bear market cycle, right? And we are entering into a phase where we as XRP holders need to shift out of this mindset, regardless of your personal beliefs in conspiracies or what are those people called, Aqua, on the internet that do like the Riddlers, right? You have David Schwartz himself in a podcast just the other day saying none of that stuff is true. And then you have Ripple representatives saying that they're shifting their focus from cross-border payments of remittances to DeFi capabilities. And you have Marcus Infinger himself saying that the most complex thing that Ripple has ever achieved in the 13 years of their existence is the lending protocol. Come on now, y'all.
Yeah, bro. Got to pay attention. Got to pay attention.